The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie! Yeah, we're gonna be a movie!
Starring everybody
And me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Hey, a movie! We can watch it all develop. Starring everybody!
And me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in! We're gonna start right here!
And we are going to start right here. Hello, and welcome to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, triple feature. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich, and Pride Month rolls on. But I am not here joined by my usual Pride partner. But then again, all partnerships should be poly. So
if you'd like, I can play that, Mark. It's okay.
So here's my partner for the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Mac and KC, the otherwise known as Mac Kettner. How do you do, sir?
I'm glad to be here after some struggle.
Yeah, you were like Scotty on the Enterprise there for a minute.
I wish I was that good.
So tonight we're doing a director focus on the Wachowski Sisters. We're talking Bound, Cloud Atlas, and Jupiter Ascending. And before I get into the meat of this monster, why are you here, Mac? This was one that you asked to be on, and I'm glad you did, because you notice Sean's not here, so there would be no podcast tonight if you hadn't, so I'm happy to have you. But I threw this out there, and you didn't tell me why. You were just like, hey, can I get on that one with the Wachowskis? And I was like, sure.
You did seem confused.
I was like, why do you want this? I barely want this. So,
well, the truth is, if I had known of the exact content of Bound, I'd have volunteered anyway. But I'm really here for Cloud Atlas. I think it's one of the unsung heroes of the cinema world, and I intend to sing it.
Oh, good. I'm doubly glad you're here, because I have thoughts about Cloud Atlas, and they're not good. So I'm glad you're here to sing. I'm glad you're here doing kind of an ersatz on trial to defend Cloud Atlas.
That'll work. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into what we're doing here. We are taking a cinematic journey through the bold, genre-bending filmography of the Wachowski Sisters, tracing their artistic evolution from the noir-tight thriller Bound of 1996 through the ambitious time-hopping epic Cloud Atlas 2012 to the sprawling space-operatic chaos of Jupiter Ascending 2015. We're going to begin tonight with Bound, their directorial debut, a lean, tightly constructed neo-noir starring Gina, Gershon, and Jennifer Tilly, while remembered today for its stylized depiction of a lesbian relationship and its feminist reversal of genre tropes. The film also laid the groundwork for the Wachowski signature style. Sharp visual framing, subversive gender politics. Oh boy, does it ever. and a meticulous blend of genre tradition and rebellion. Critics at the time praised its confidence and tension, and it's since become a cult classic, often cited for how it queered the crime genre with both sensuality and grit. Fast forward to Cloud Atlas, a deeply ambitious adaptation, those are words, of David Mitchell's novel. Co-directed with Tom Tykwer, the film features a sprawling ensemble cast of Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, Hugh Grant, Jim Broadbent, Duna Bay, playing multiple interconnected roles across 6 timelines. Aesthetic maximalism meets spiritual recursion here. Past lives, future consequences, and the collapse of my sanity, and the collapse of individual identity into something larger. The film was divisive, no shit, praised for its ambition, but criticized for its complex structure and controversial use of makeup. Still, in retrospect, Cloud Atlas is regarded as a turning point, a declaration that the Wachowskis were more interested in ideas than in simple spectacle. And finally, we crash, quite literally, into Jupiter Ascending, a wildly uneven, endlessly fascinating space opera starring Mila Kunis of That 70s Show and Channing Tatum of Gambit. The film grows genetic. The film throws genetic royalty, flying rollerblades, Eddie Redmayne whisper shouting, and bureaucratic intergalactic dynasties into a blender. It's messy, no doubt, but it's also unmistakably Wachowskian. Rich with metaphor, post-capitalistic critique, and gendered power struggles wrapped in ridiculous sci-fi fantasy. It was largely panned upon release, but like much of their work, Jupiter Ascending has developed a loyal fan base who see past the surface chaos of the emotional and thematic sincerity underneath. Through these films, we trace the Wachowski sisters' cinematic transformation from intimate noir storytellers to high-concept philosophers to unapologetically maximalist dreamers. No matter the box office or Rotten Tomato score, both low, their work consistently pushes boundaries of genre, identity, and cinematic form itself. So buckle in. We're talking legacy, aesthetics, ideas, and all the gloriously weird stuff in between. So how familiar are you with the Wachowskis, Mac?
As the Wachowskis, not at all. What I mean by is I've seen their films. I did not make note of them when I did.
So I really was only familiar with the Wachowskis through the Matrix movies. And to this day, my favorite sort of secondary resource on the Wachowskis is this guy, Confused Matthew. You've never heard of him, but he was an internet sensation on YouTube about 10 years ago, maybe more. And he would do these YouTube video reviews, but they were deep dives into film study. And the one that I think turned me on to him was his one of The Matrix, because he spent the first 30 minutes of his review going through the philosophical backbone that made The Matrix what it was. And I think it's that makes the Wachowskis, to me, such interesting people, is that so much of what they're doing is laden with their ideas about known philosophical ideas. And then they kind of take a genre and they twist it into a balloon animal. And kind of wrap their interpretation of different philosophies around it. They are interesting filmmakers. I wouldn't call them good, but I would definitely say they are. I think Hollywood is better with them than without them, because someone has to be out there challenging the norms, doing weird shit, and reminding us that film doesn't always have to be about butts and seats. I'll give you a moment to respond to that.
Now, that is let me say this. That's an overly optimistic view of cinema. I as a thespian myself, as a person who began in stage and storytelling, I believe in stage and storytelling and film for that very reason. But film has an unusual burden that stage only has a small amount of. You must have butts and seats, because a significant outlay has been made just to get this built, just to get it distributed. You can't just go do a play with a handful of people and a building, which is often what happens with just plays. But cinema, even the cheapest end, there's a front end investment. If it's nothing else, it's time and equipment. So I like the idea that storytelling is more important than butts and seats, but the reality for cinema is cruel.
I don't disagree with your overall analysis. Obviously, you have to sell tickets to things, but I'm also an avid TikToker, and the amount of plays I see on TikTok, usually one person playing multiple roles. And
That's very generous of you.
And their 1 minute plays, the times they are changing, my friend. So, who are the Wachowskis? Lena Wachowski, born Larry Wachowski, June 21st, 1965, and Lily Wachowski, born Andy Wachowski, December 29th, 1967, are American film and television writers and producers. The sisters are both trans women. Together known as the Wachowskis, the sisters have worked as a writing and directing team through most of their careers. They made their directing debut in 1996 with the aforementioned Bound, and achieved fame with their second film, The Matrix, which I still to this day love. The original Matrix movie in 1999.
Yes,
one of my favorites. A major box office success for which they won the Saturn Award for Best Director. They wrote and directed its two sequels, The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, both in 2003, and were involved in the writing and production of other works in the Matrix franchise. Following the commercial success of the Matrix series, the Wachowskis wrote and produced the 2005 film V for Vendetta, which we reviewed here during Alan Moore Month years ago, an adaptation of the aforementioned graphic novel by Alan Moore and David Lloyd. And in 2008, they released the film Speed Racer, a live-action adaptation of the Japanese anime series. We're going to eventually talk about Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending, which then followed. They also worked on the Netflix series Sense8, the latter of which they co-created with Michael J. Straczynski, debuted in 2015. The second season of Sense8 ended the series in 2018 and was Lana's first major project without Lily. So there's a lot out here to get into with them, but we'll be here forever. I just kind of wanted to give a bit of a primer on who these folks are. So Bound is a 1996, as I said before, American neo-noir, American erotic, bleh, words are hard, erotic crime thriller, written and directed by the Wachowskis. It stars Jennifer Tilly, Gina Gershon, and Joe Pantoliano. The film centers on Violet Tilly, a gun mole who longs to escape her relationship with her mobster boyfriend, Caesar. They enter into a clandestine affair with an alluring ex-con, Corky, who's played by Gershon. And the two women hatch a scheme to steal $2 million of mafia money. This was also John P. Ryan's final appearance before he died in 2007. It was made under a budget of $6 million. It earned $7 million. And it has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'll stop there. We'll use... Did you see this movie before I pitched it to you?
No. I
Okay.
probably would have if I'd had the time, but I don't even remember when it came out. I remember thinking when it came out, this isn't really my kind of movie anyway. I'm not really into noir and gangster movies even less. So I probably wouldn't have gone anyway.
So I was in college when this movie came out. I was probably, I think, a sophomore in college. This is 1996, and because I remember being a film snob around this time, and I remember seeing like a lot of like independent stuff. I'm fairly certain I saw this. Like when I rewatching it again for this podcast, I vaguely remember it. When I was preparing this podcast, I had forgotten all about it and I had to be like reminded of it. And like I said, I'm kind of searching back through my memory going, I know I've seen this before. This seems vaguely familiar. So real quick, Corky, what a great name. An ex-con and handyman is hired to renovate an apartment next door to Violet, Jennifer Tilly, the glamorous girlfriend of a violent mobster named Caesar, who's played by Joe Pantoliano. The two women fall into a passionate affair and hatch plans to steal $2 million of the mob money from Caesar. Their plot hinges on deception, timing, and trust. As tensions rise and the heist unravels, Caesar grows increasingly paranoid and violent. Ultimately, Gina Gershon takes a good punch to the face. Ultimately, Corky and Violet outsmart him, escape with the money, and drive off together. Free in love and victorious, a stylish neo-noir thriller with a lesbian couple at its center. Bound was revolutionary in its queering of traditional crime tropes. What did you think of Bound, Mac?
It was filmed elegantly, even exquisitely. Like I said, I have a tough time relating to the mobster movie to begin with, and noir even worse. However, if you take this from cinematography, it was immaculate. There was not a single misunderstandable scene. There wasn't something in the background I couldn't make out. It wasn't overly lit, which is tricky to do. To make everything in the background seem clear without overlighting it. I can look over your shoulder and see a bookshelf and most of the things that are in it, but that's because there's a direct light on it. The cinematography and lighters will tell you that's really hard to do without doing it on purpose. So I felt the camera work was immaculate. The lighting was perfect. The sound was perfect. I can't rate it on storytelling, except to say that I was never lost. I always either knew what was going on or I was guessing at the motives of people regarding what was going on by evidence I clearly had. Regarding overall enjoyment, I'm going to give it, for production value, I'm going to give it a B+. There's really nothing I can find that's wrong with it. It was just terribly up close. It was an intimate movie. It was very small. There was no great landscapes anywhere, and that's hard to shoot. So I may even get them up to an A- for that.
So you're a playwright, right, Mac?
Yeah.
Playwrights are not movies.
Right.
I believe that's. I believe that's
good. Very good. You get a bone for that.
This feels more like a play than it does a movie.
Boy, I'm gonna say yeah. If it were possible to produce that many sets on a stage, you could get away with this as a stage play.
I think
there's absolutely no need for any long range shots of any kind.
I was gonna say, I think even with a slight rewrite, and you're working with 2 rooms and a wall,
Well, there was a staircase shot. There was a couple of street scenes.
Right.
But yeah, a little rewriting would take care of that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think if you broke this down, did this minimalist style, and just had the 2 rooms and the wall. One of my favorite movies of all time is Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. It's a very simple movie, and it's before Quentin Tarantino went out of his mind and started doing really complicated stuff. It's mostly shot in a warehouse, and it's a lot of dialogue. Reservoir Dogs, outside of a few scenes, you could do a play of. Bound operates for me the same way, where a lot of the tension is in the dialogue writing, and it's also in the tension of one character not knowing what's going on with another character, and that character knowing everything that's going on, and wondering, when is that tension going to break? Because that tension is what is holding this whole movie together.
Yes.
And when it finally does break, it breaks into like an explosion of violence. But once they steal the money, because I know in the plot description there's a lot, they threw a tension, but I think what was implied was the tension and the timing of stealing the money. Because what happens is, if those of you who haven't seen it, there's a suitcase full of money that Joe Pantoliano is returning to his mob bosses, and they're coming to collect it from him. And all it just has to do is sit in the case on the bar. And Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon devise a scheme to where they're going to distract him long enough to where he's not going to be anywhere near the case, and going to make it seem like Jennifer Tilly is going somewhere, which gives Gina Gershon just enough time to sneak in, switch the money with a stack of newspapers, and run out the door and hide it in her apartment, where Joe Pantoliano will have no idea to look there. And they execute it kind of flawlessly. I actually don't think there's a tremendous amount of tension in doing that. The tension for me is watching Joe Pantoliano lose his fucking mind over, where is this money? How am I going to get this money back? How am I going to not be dead? And it's funny because the women keep trying to gaslight him into believing that he should just make a run for it. Like, you just need to go.
Yeah.
They are trying their level best to manipulate him into giving them their get out of jail free card, and he won't take the bait. He is thinking, overthinking, double thinking, and thinking again. And the women are just like, oh, for the love of God, you
run away.
You rope of a person. Please, but for once in your life, do the right thing and just make a run for it. And he won't do it. And then he figures out what the gag is. And all the credit in the world to the Wachowskis, because there tends to be this thing in film, and maybe rightly so, of you can't. I'll give you an example of what I'm about to say before I say what I'm about to say. Right. Everyone goes all up in arms about Terminator 3. When Arnold Schwarzenegger is taking the model who is playing the robot villain and smashing her head into toilets. And everyone was like, this makes it seem like domestic violence is okay. Which is why people don't do this in film, because there's always a small crowd of very loud people saying you can't do that to women, even in fiction. And all the credit in the world to the Wachowskis for playing against cultural type and having Joe Pantoliano beat the living shit out of Gina Gershon.
Yep.
I mean, it's not pretty. It's not
Shouldn't
quite.
be.
Yeah. I mean, domestic violence is violence between two intimate partners. He just straight up batters this woman. And he does so out of, like, he feels disrespected. He does so out of rage. He does so as a way of punishing her for stealing from him. Like, it's weird, but it's the most subtexted beating I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's really powerful stuff, and I give all the credit in the world to the Wachowskis for being brave enough to do it, because I don't think a lot of filmmakers would, and I think a lot of executives would have been like, you gotta do something with this scene. You can't have Joe Pantoliano straight up, full fist punch Gina Gershon.
Well, I mean, honestly, given the reviews that we're doing tonight, they did that a lot. Mm-hmm. They did that in that we're not going to distinguish ourselves as the feminine directors.
Right.
We're gonna make the same kind of action movie you might expect from anyone, and we're gonna punch where it ought to be punched. We're gonna kick where it ought to be kicked, and we're gonna do it better than them. And honestly, on those grounds, I'm with them.
Yeah, I think my major criticism of the Wachowskis, not with Bound. Bound, I think anyone can understand that. I think it's one of those movies where just over the lapse of time, people have forgotten about. But it's a movie that I think everybody who is an adult, and I really want to stress that, don't show this movie to children.
Oh, no. Dear God, no.
But if you're an adult and you have any kind of appreciation for film, you should watch Bound. It's that good. But I think the rest, like the Matrix movies, Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending, I think one of the major failings of the Wachowskis is that they've overestimated how smart their audiences are. Like, they are...
Yeah, and you'll visit really, that a lot in Cloud Atlas too.
Yeah, they do a lot of really interesting ideas and and exploration of philosophy, and they just kind of expect the audience to go with it. And I think it's overtaxing their audience. These are, we're not there yet, but like Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending are definitely two movies where they're too big for the audience that would appreciate them.
Well, they were pitched to, let me say this right. I think the Wachowskis are looking for a subset of all of the movies that they're trying to pitch to. Matrix was pitched to the sci-fi crowd. Well, the sci-fi crowd is quite large now. We have the smarter end and the we like action end and we like sex end and everybody likes something. But I think they're trying, or perhaps even subconsciously trying, to pitch to the upper end. There were so many potentials for plot conflicts in the Matrix. And if you didn't really understand computers, that was going to get worse. After a while, it was just unbelievable. They did the same thing in Bound.
My favorite thing, and I'm going to connect this to Bound as well, my favorite thing was after the second Matrix movie, wanting to punch all the people who didn't get the architect's speech.
Now, wait a minute. The architect's speech, if you weren't completely grounded when it was said, if you didn't feel you understood the underpinnings, how a program can load information, and that's the telephone to the ear, and how you could learn something instantly. As a program, you could learn something instantly. If you weren't completely grounded by the time the architect spoke, you were going to be lost.
That's fine. We should escort those people out of the movie and into something more their speed. Maybe Ernest Goes to Camp.
Maybe get him over to Speed Racer. That was better.
I would say the Merovingian followed by the architect are like my two. It's like you go to the Merovingian speech, to the ghost chase, to the architect, and it's like that whole section of the Matrix 2 is like my favorite thing ever. And I remember so many people. We are going to get back to Bound, I promise. But I remember so many people like complaining that they didn't understand the Merovingian speech. They love the fucking chase. It's like the best chase in the history of cinema.
Yeah, great chase.
And then we go to the architect again, and everyone's like, just fucking kill me. I don't understand what he's saying.
Yep.
And I feel like those people should be shot. No.
Okay. But that's also a long, I don't remember how long the architect scene is, but it's a long speech. It's nearly a monologue.
Yes. And
in fact, it really is a monologue.
And it's delivered at Micro Machine pace.
Yeah. They're not sprucing it up with anything. This is a guy sitting in a chair explaining shit.
Right.
And if you don't get the first three things he says, it's just not going to matter. In fact, I've talked to a lot of my friends who didn't get that. And it's like, okay, you understand that this means this and this means that, and that's what this is doing. Oh,
well, that should be the litmus test for voting. You know, you just walk into a booth and they say,
don't get me started on that. God,
they play the architect speech. If you can understand, if you can take this quiz,
you are smart enough to vote.
Yes.
Oh my Lord. Okay.
So Bound isn't that hoity. Bound.
No.
Bound talks very plainly about what if you're a lesbian trying to make their way in the world. Would you not check up with a guy anyway just to make sure you get fed and taken care of? And, you know, is that really living? And these are the questions that Bound is playing with. You know, it's funny. One of my favorite things I've ever watched is the show called Dummy. The show was on, I believe, not Tubi. It was the thing where shows were cut up into like 10-minute chunks. It's gone now. Quibi, that's what it was. It was a Quibi show, and it's been since repurposed into something for the Roku TV network. But it's basically a movie that was cut up into 10-minute chunks. And the show is about Anna Kendrick befriends a sex doll. That's it. The sex doll talks. That's all you need to know. But there's a great scene between Anna Kendrick and the sex doll where they're talking about the Bechdel test. And that's what I thought about while I was watching Bound, was there was this very purposeful dialogue between Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly about what it means to be gay, what it specifically means to be a gay woman, and how you have to interact with the straight world in order to live. And the one perspective is, well, you don't. You can kind of operate as a hamster in a rollerball and not interact at all. And the other one, it says, well, is that really living? Why not interact with the straight world? Take it for what it's worth. Use it as you need to, and and go on. And is that really living? And this is where the two women are at loggerheads.
Well, the second choice implies a price. You have to give something that Gina's not going to give.
Well, I think both imply a price.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
In the former, it's isolation.
Mm-hmm.
In the latter, it's, I don't know what word you would ascribe to this, but it would be selling your soul.
Well, it's prostituting yourself with a very specific goal in mind.
Sure.
So, they both imply a price, and it's easy to tell that Gina's character is kind of reserved anyway. She probably don't talk to a lot of people. Not many people get her. Why would she talk to a lot of people? Which is why she has a little trouble warming up to Jennifer. What are you doing? Are you actually after me? Because that doesn't normally happen like this. But Jennifer Tilly's character.
I really hate when women ask for sex because they don't ask for it directly.
Yeah,
it's always got to be some sort of like game. And it was like, oh Jesus Christ! You should see what the future's going to look like, Gina.
Yes, this doesn't get better. But they each pay their own price. I think the price they can most easily bear.
Yeah, I really love the dialogue in this movie. I love the performance of said dialogue. I think it's great. The one thing I would question and maybe push back against just a little bit, just slightly, just a little push. There's so much being made of this movie about the presentation of a lesbian couple. It's a third of the movie at best. It's the first act.
Not bad. Yeah.
The rest of it is the heist and the fallout from the heist. Like, for most of this movie, for a good 2/3 of it, it's Joe's movie. Joe's the star of this thing. Jennifer Tilly is just and if anything, if you're like, no, you have to give something to one of the two women, at least it's Jennifer Tilly, who's a cat on a hot tin roof through most of this. Gina Gershon spends the middle act hiding from Joe Pantaleone in the next room. That's it. That's all she does. So the fact that there was, and I'll get your reaction to this when we move on. The fact that there's that much of a focus on, it's this. You would think it was Thelma and Louise, the way this is being written about, and it's not. This is more Reservoir Dogs than it is Thelma and Louise.
Yeah. I think they actually. I mean, this is not a new plot line. Here's a mob setting. Here are people who kill each other when things go wrong, and Romeo falls for Juliet, and that's not cool. Well, that's not new at all. I mean, it's usually presented in a mobster movie with a lower end muscle guy falls in love with the wife of an upper end gangster, and oh my God, what's going to happen now? I think the Wachowskis in writing this one only threw the tiniest little curveball. Let's make them both girls.
Right.
That way, it's not been overdone, and the dynamic is just different enough that we can wonder about their motivations. We might be able to spot a maul and a muscle, and perhaps we even think we know what they're doing. But the fix-it girl and the mobster's girlfriend, wife, person, and they're gay. Is that different? You know, if you don't know a lot of gay people, that's going to pose a lot of questions. But it should pose questions anyway because this setting is absurd.
Yeah.
So they fade into the background for Joe or for Caesar, and we're wondering the whole time: did we really establish their motives, or are they playing each other? And I think it adds a level of mystery.
I would agree with that. I was going to say before we head out into the next movie, they, as a vehicle for exploring the complexities of lesbian relationships, I think it's okay. It's kind of like they front-loaded the movie with that, and then they were like, all right, we've just... It's kind of like you've called on the one kid in class you promised to call on, and then you ignore him for the rest of the class.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, all right, we heard from you already. Shut up.
And the only time they're really addressing lesbianism is as they meet each other and how cautiously they reveal to each other. The rest of it is just any couple would be this way under these circumstances.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say even any couple. It's like by the time Jennifer Tilly is headed up to here with Joe and decides she wants to rob him and run away and goes to Gina about it, this stopped being about two women and just started being about a heist and getting away with a heist.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hope that doesn't sound to people like I don't like the movie. I love this movie. I think it's great. You talk about something, it sounds like it's got all of these flaws. These are not flaws. These are just observations I'm making. I actually don't think the movie has many flaws, really. And it could have been shorter. Speaking of short, oh God, this next movie.
Now, wait a minute. The Wachowskis in general have a length problem.
Yeah,
in the length of the movies.
Yes.
That's another way they overtax and overestimate their audience.
But this, if someone put a gun to my head and be like, "We don't believe you're really Mark Radulich," complain about this movie. It's too long.
But it is.
Yeah. It's too a little too long. It could have been tightened up. I think Joe gets a little hammy at times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a few times I wanted him to kind of turn to the camera and go, "What have I done? I've killed the rabbit." He's like, "What are you doing here?" Like you kill people for a living. Please keep it together. And I think they kind of conflate manicness for tension.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Or substitute, tension for mania, perceived mania. And they were like, come on, like, we need you to act crazy so that there's more tension in this scene. It's like, you really don't, though. Like, him kind of, again, show don't tell. Him, sweaty. Him, close-up shots of his eyes darting around the room, pacing. Yeah. We didn't really need him, practically going full Stella, in the middle of the apartment. So
no, they did a lot of that with Gina's character too. She's alone in that room, looking at the wall that she's listening through, as though she could see through it, when in fact she's just really listening intently. We get a lot of that kind of tension. Yeah.
So that's Bound. Go watch it if you haven't. It's free on like Pluto and Tubi and all the those free movie channels. Definitely worth checking out.
If you like noir, if you like mob movies, this will scratch the itch, I promise.
And speaking of scratching the itch, that sex scene.
I've been trying to not fish out the creepy old guy stuff, but I could watch Gina and Jennifer we could just make a movie about that.
Yeah, really. Give me 90 minutes of Gina Gershon making out with Jennifer Tilly.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sold. I will also
I'm ready.
not be wearing pants.
And I don't care if you call it porn. I want it.
I want it.
No.
All right. Speaking of things I want, Cloud Atlas, to end, is a 2012 epic science fiction film written and directed by the Wachowskis and the aforementioned Tom Tykwer. As I said before, it is based on the 2004 novel by David Mitchell. It has multiple plots occurring during 6 eras and features an ensemble cast who perform multiple roles across time periods. This thing had a budget of almost $150 million. It made $130.5 million. It premiered at the September 8th, 2012, 37th Toronto International Film Festival, and was publicly released on October 26, 2012 in conventional and IMAX cinemas. Critics were polarized, the devil you say, causing it to be included on the various best films and worst films list. It was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Original Score for Twycwer, who scored the film, Johnny Klimek and Reinhold Heil. It received several nominations at the Saturn Awards for Best Science Fiction Film and one for Best Editing and Best Makeup. So don't go into your plot synopsis. Listen to me very carefully. Follow the director.
I'll do what I can.
Don't go into your craft review. Just tell me about your relationship with this movie. When did you see it? What were your impressions? Not your craft review, just kind of like your initial gut reactions, that kind of thing. Tell me the romance in which you had this Cloud Atlas.
This occurred at a time in my life when I was staring intently at the idea of reincarnation, which is kind of perfect. If reincarnation were real, it might look like this. Or if you think it is real, it get strap in. It might work out like this. It helped me. My interest in it initially was, can I test my ideas about many lives in this fictitious setting? Which I think a lot of people arrive at action movies like that. Well, if I had that gun and I were on the 45th floor, what would I do? So my interest was philosophical originally. And when I found out Tom Hanks was kind of prominent there, I know he's sort of into philosophy too. I thought maybe they'd actually go there, and I think they did.
That was the right answer. Very good, Mac. You passed. You can come back.
I avoided the craft review.
Thank you. It's great that I tell people, don't give me your craft review. Tell me your relationship with this movie. And they go, I love this movie. Let me tell you about all the craft elements. And I then want to bite my computer.
Well, I need to get with you about the exact definition of a craft review because I really don't know.
It doesn't matter. You still made contact with
the wall. I did good. I'm happy with that.
You did good. You can come back. All right. Cloud Atlas, spanning 6 time periods from 1849 to the post-apocalyptic future, Cloud Atlas tells interlinked stories that explore reincarnation, interconnected souls, and the ripple effect of individual actions. Key plot lines include a slave ship rebellion, a 1930 composer's love affair and betrayal, a journalist uncovering a nuclear scandal in the 1970s, a modern publisher trapped in a nursing home, a clones rebellion in future Korea, a tribal survivor navigating a devastated Earth. Actors like Tom Hanks and the aforementioned Halle Berry played different roles in each timeline, emphasizing the idea of spiritual recurrence. The film ends with hope. Past sins are paid for, revolutions succeed, and love endures beyond death. Ambitious and sprawling, the movie is a meditation on time, oppression, and the redemptive power of compassion. Now, I'm not stupid, but sometimes I'm just, oh gosh, what is it? I'm just a mere chicken lawyer. And sometimes very, very, it could be that I tried to watch a 3-hour movie in the middle of my work day in pieces while I was also doing TikToks and, and answering texts and whatever. So maybe
you would never do that.
Maybe if I was in the theater and I had to sit first of all, let me tell you my reaction to this movie. Okay. So again,
okay, but I don't want your craft review. Just your,
you're not going to get my craft review. I am a professional. God fucking damn it. So I'm also obnoxious. So again, I don't have time. I'm a busy man, Mac, and I don't have time to watch the movies that I pick to review. So
absurd. You have your people to do that.
That's right. The AI do it for me. Tell me what to think, Fancy. Now, I have to kind of get my movies in where I have a spare hour here or there. And a nice 90-minute, maybe even 2-hour feature, I can get in like right now in the 2 hours separated by a few in between, or my 1-hour lunch break while I'm working. And I think, well, so far in the process of doing all this, I've watched Pump Up the Volume, SFW. I've watched SLC Punk. I've watched Bound. I was like, okay, I can do this. I can fit these movies in. If I can chunk them in the first hour, chunk them in the second hour, I'll get through this. I go to Paramount Plus, like all good boys do. And I click on the icon that says Cloud Atlas after I've typed it in to the search menu, the search bar. And there I am in my pretty pink dress and my lolly, my sailor hat on, innocently ready to be Wachowski'd. And I see it's 3 fucking hours long. And I threw the lolly and I sighed and I said, why? Why does nothing work out the way I need it to?
Why me? Why?
Had I been at the theater when this came out and was able to kind of focus on it, I might have been able to stay with the through thread of this movie. After all, I did enjoy the architect speech. However, watching it in chunks, only half paying attention, my impression of this movie was this was 6 movies that were tossed in a blender and then edited together by a meth addict.
Don't hold it all in, Mark. Say what you mean.
When I was able to pay attention, and the parts of it I understood kind of what was happening, at least in context, there was some really interesting, really funny things. There's some stuff that actually does stand out to me, but it's kind of like watching the Kentucky Fried Movie or Amazon Women on the Moon. Some of the sketches worked and some of them didn't. Some of them made me laugh and some of them didn't. And that's kind of my first take impression on Cloud Atlas. I had never seen this before. I didn't know what this was. This is on this list because I didn't want to do any of the Matrix movies. I've already done them. So when I looked at what the when I wanted to do the Wachowskis at the height of the trans movement last year, I put this list together, and then Sean ended up not being able to do it, so we kicked it into this year because timing is everything. But again, I'd never seen Cloud Atlas. I didn't know what it was. So all of my first impressions were Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. So with that said, I sit at your feet, Socrates. Tell me about this movie.
All right.
Do your craft review.
Oh, okay. From an actor's point of view, that's how they got these heavy hitters. They've got Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, Hugh Grant, Hugo Weaving. I mean, the list just goes on. Even if you don't know some of these names, they exist in stage, I promise. These are all heavy hitters. And the way they got them in was they said, okay, Tom, you're going to play 6 different people, and we're not going to typecast you. You're going to be the hero in one and a slimy doctor villain in another. You're going to be an ancillary character in one and the lead in another. This is literally an ensemble, and it's not just one ensemble, it's 6 separate stories. All of you will recur, and no one will be able to rely on what part you're playing. We've got Hugh Grant playing a silent headhunter, a cannibal. And I'm sorry, I got no room for Hugh, but he was great. They made it well. He did it was directed well. It worked. He was one of the few actors I had trouble pinning down. Is that? Because I looked at him and said, that's not Hugh. No. Yes, it is. That's how they got the actors in. But regarding the movie itself, this was an experiment. This was, if we take this complicated idea, i.e. the reincarnation, and we put every variable in a different place in 6 different stories, which would be a real timeline if you buy reincarnation, then how would that work? And as a movie, can it work? My advice to them, if they come to me with that, I said, don't go 6. Go 4. Pick the 4 you like the best. 6 is too much. The Wachowskis always go too far, and I kind of admire them. It's brass balls for that. Mm-hmm. But they were trying to. The problem, as a cinematic experience, the problem with this movie is you're not having one experience. You're not having an action movie or a romance or a comedy or this or that. You've got elements of all of these things in one movie. So in addition to its absurd length and its already top-heavy complexity, you've got especially in American cinemas, you've got the confusion of you can't rely on Tom Hanks to be the good guy, and you have to somehow follow him through all 6 stories when you realize you really shouldn't be doing that. These characters keep lacing their lives together, and they never really explain that. They're never really said. No one ever explains. Not to me. I didn't see it clearly, and I was looking for it. I thought the composer was like a narrator character who was trying to explain everything, but I didn't get it. How did these people keep nodding up their lives? Are they advancing? Are they getting anywhere? It's hard to tell. I'm going to say no. So it seemed a bit random. It seemed a bit confusing. It was a bit long, and it did not devote itself to a single genre. There.
So some parts that I liked. The bit where they finally do lock up the publisher in the insane asylum, I was very much paying attention to. I was like, "Oh, this is a nightmare."
Yeah.
And that actor is just one step above like Mr. Bean or Benny Hill. Like he I assume he's British.
Jim Broadbent, he is British.
Yeah. Between the pompous Britishness of his behavior and the absurdity of what's going on in the nightmare of being locked against your will in an asylum, and the implication being it was done out of revenge, not out of his need for inpatient psychiatric treatment. I was like, my God, this is an absolute nightmare. But it's funny because like he plays it off really well. It's like an entertaining series of scenes, but it's also horror. Another thing I keyed into was the collaboration between the composers of the old man, of the young fella, and at least one of them is gay. And I liked the kind of interplay between them, that kind of push and pull, not that kind of push and pull, you perverts. This idea of like, this idea of like really pressuring somebody to give you more than they think they have to come up with something truly extraordinary. And it all leads to this one scene where the young composer thinks that because he's done this thing that the older composer is into him, and the older composer shoots him down so badly. Like I sometimes I'll try to like remember the line or do the impression of somebody. Watch our entire critic review from last night, where we just half the review is us just saying lines from the show. But like, something along the lines of like, "Oh, you think I want, a romp with a dandy?" And I'm like, "Yikes!" Like,
yeah, that's a whole level of fuck you.
Yeah, it is. I didn't get any of the stuff that was happening in the future. It completely lost me. The slave rebellion on the ship made some degree of sense, and when they almost shoot the black guy while he's trying to fix the sail to show that he can do it, and the captain's like, "Kill him anyway. I don't really care. Like, I don't want him here." I was like, "Yeah, that's relevant." I think in terms of physical craft, look, the Wachowskis, I think, are on the positive end of competent to excellent visual directors.
Definitely.
I was starting to say this before. Cloud Atlas is a really great example of extremely smart and talented people fully executing their vision, but not taking care to make sure the audience is coming along with them, which is an element of filmmaking. You can make your bogged down, hyper philosophical sci-fi think piece, but if you don't explain to people what is happening as it's happening, no one's going to last through this movie. No one's going to remember it. No one's going to retain it. We're talking about it because I wanted to talk about these famous trans directors and the stuff that they've done. Had this been a Steven Spielberg movie, which it very well could have been, we wouldn't be talking about this. I don't think this has, unless you're really into reincarnation, which apparently you are, I don't think this has a lot of cultural staying power. I think this is a weirdo picture, and the great flaw of it is the Wachowskis expected way too much of their audience.
Mark, hold on a minute. Weren't you suggesting a Matrix ago that there was a magnitude of intelligence that was being expected of the audience? Don't you sound like them right now?
That doesn't apply to me.
I'm sorry, I got you. They lost you, and now you're mad about it.
But a minute ago, okay, you're referring to 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago. I admitted I'm not smart enough to get this movie. Somehow or other, I got the architect, but I didn't get this. So
well, okay, but honestly, yeah, I got lost too. But there are magnitudes of intelligence as an audience, and yeah, I think Cloud Atlas exceeded 90% of us. But there's 10% going, oh, come on, Mark. Oh, come on, Mac. I got that. You got the architect speech. You didn't understand the future bit.
Here's the thing. I think the Matrix over-explains itself. I think
I'm going to argue with that.
I think the Merovingian and the architect over-explain their points. That's the great flaw of those two speeches. I think when Lawrence Fishburne is explaining red pill and blue pill, I think, even, Joe Pantoliano later, when he's talking about, does chicken really taste like chicken, or does it taste like what the machines think chicken tastes like?
Yeah.
I think the movie over-explains its points. I think the movie actually does dumb things down for people.
Okay, but even having done that, they lost a lot of people. So did they?
Well, okay, you can't dumb it down to you can't dumb it down to Ernest Goes to Camp levels.
I agree with you. But I think as moviegoers, we're going to have to accept, even people who think of ourselves as intelligent, we're going to have to accept that occasionally somebody's going to throw us a curveball. We're going to think it's a bad movie, but what in fact has happened is it went over our head.
I don't think Cloud Atlas is a bad movie, though. I actually think it's got heady ideas. I think it's a very big picture. I think
wow, yeah.
And that's my point. Like, when I was thinking about what to say about this movie, I can't be one of those people like, I didn't get it, so it's bad. Then I'll be exactly who I rail against weekly on Damn You Hollywood, and I don't want to be that person. So I have to judge the craft elements of this movie individually, and individually they all stack up. My major criticism of this movie is within the direction and conception of this movie. I don't think the Wachowskis cared a fig about whether or not the audience was gonna come with them or not. This was very much a queer film in the sense of, we are here, deal with us.
We're gonna do this.
Right. This movie is present, deal with it. If it's too much for you, that's your problem, not ours. Which is fine if you're a person or a movement. It's less fine if you're a movie. You're still kind of symbiotically tied to your audience.
Yes. And if you sell yourself as an avant-garde sci-fi, again, you're going to draw a crowd that isn't really going to enjoy this. This should have been marketed very differently, but the problem with that is the people they want to draw, the philosopher types, A, represent this much of moviegoers, and B, they might not even appreciate the sci-fi aspects of this.
What this should have been was a miniseries,
not
a movie.
That. Yeah,
because I think because movie audiences Alexis, I hope you're listening. movie audiences, ladies and gentlemen of the Screaming Boy podcast, and TV audiences are not the same. It is two different audiences. You think it's the same because it's made up of people who are also made up of Soylent Green, but it's not. It's two different audiences. The cinema audience is not the same as the television audience. It's also two different viewing experiences. And I think if Cloud Atlas had been maybe fleshed out a bit more, broken up into chunks, and served as an HBO miniseries, we wouldn't be talking about it the way we're talking about it now.
I had not thought about it that way. I completely concur. That's a great idea. And it would have allowed them to flesh out each of the 6 plots better without over-explaining something or not explaining it.
Right. I don't remember where I said this last. I know I said this recently, and it might have been even in someone's therapy session. Who knows? But I said, but there's a difference between being able to compartmentalize your dinner and someone saying, "Open up your mouth, and we're going to lift up the table." It's still the same food. It's still the same quality of food. It's all a matter of how fast it's being served and how fast you're able to digest it. Cloud Atlas, I think, needed time to savor and sit and be digested, not shoved down your throat, by being thrown down the table at you. It was too big for the medium. So I'll give you the last word.
But they were also trying to give us telescopic view. And if we cross 6 lifetimes with these 6 people, what does that look like this way? It redefines the epic, really. It's not a time over time about people who are sailing. It's literally following them through transitions and lifetimes. And like you said, they didn't explain a lot. Why do people who show up in one lifetime as heroic and good show up as slimy and evil in another? How the hell did they talk Hugo Weaving into a nurse's outfit? I like to die when I realized that was him.
That was Hugo Weaving?
Yeah, you didn't realize? The nurse in the
I knew it was a dude. I didn't realize it was Hugo.
It was Hugo. It was Hugo goddamn Weaving. I was impressed as hell. I mean, there's nothing that man can't do. But yeah, they were trying to redefine the epic in a very mixed over and complicated way. And I think that was the table being lifted up. They're trying to give us the long view, but in order to give us the long view, we had to see it all at once.
Yeah, there's a reason why they're paying very high-priced, highly educated business people to decide what gets to be greenlit as a film and what gets to be repurposed as a television show, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's get into the magnum opus of the Wachowski filmography. Truly award-winning epic cinema, as you like it, as it was meant to be. The zenith, if you will, of filmmaking.
I didn't bring a violin, Mark.
The end of the road in terms of cultural, cinematic creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, Jupiter Ascending is a 2015 space opera film, written, directed, co-produced by the Wachowskis, starring Channing Tatum. Yes, of also Magic Mike, Michelle, who I didn't put the comment up. He's like,
I wondered if she was wrong.
She's like, why didn't you? What do you mean? This is Magic Mike, and I'm like, he'll always be Gambit to me, you motherfucker.
You're gonna start such a fight when the people come back.
that's for the people right there.
Yes,
people. And Mila Kunis with Sean Bean, who's always dead in every movie, Eddie Redmayne, and Douglas Booth in supporting roles. The film is centered on Jupiter Jones as opposed to Peter Parker, an ordinary cleaning woman, and Kane Wise, an interplanetary warrior who informs Jones that her destiny extends beyond Earth. Supporting cast members, Douglas Booth has described the film's fictional universe as a cross between The Matrix and Star Wars, while Kunis identified indulgence and consumerism as its underlying themes. This had a $210 million Marvel money budgets, and at a box office of also modern Marvel movies of $184 million. It has a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the AI writes, pleasing to the eye, but narratively befuddled. Jupiter Ascending delivers another visually thrilling misfire from the Wachowskis. All right. Accolades. This thing won. Eddie Redmayne won the worst supporting actor at the Golden Raspberries. It was nominated for a whole bunch more, but not stupid awards. Channing Tatum was nominated for favorite male action star at the Kids' Choice Award. He was also nominated for Choice Movie Actor at the Teen Choice Award for a sci-fi fantasy, and Mila Kunis was nominated for an actress. So there's its legacy, ladies and gentlemen. Had you seen Jupiter Ascending before I made you watch this piece of crap?
Yes, I did. I'm kind of a Mila Kunis fan, and
oh yeah,
this landed in her. Yes, I am. You want to go after that?
She does it for you, huh? That's your girl.
You know, she does it for me, but she's an interesting, from an actor's point of view. She comes off as someone really lightweight as an actor, which is fine. She's cute. You can get away with that, but she keeps trying to prove herself more deep, and she keeps playing the same role somehow.
I don't know how she got into the bad mom universe.
Yeah,
like the movie itself is fine. Her performance in it is fine, but
really
I feel like she did bad mom, and now that's all. It's like she was kind of a sex symbol on That 70s Show, and then did the bad mom movie, and now all anyone ever sees her is dumpy mom, and I'm like, how? How does Mila Kunis keep getting the dumpy mom roles?
I think she's pursuing it. I think she's looking to reshape her image. She's got the sex symbol thing down, but like a lot of sex symbols, that's all she gets offered now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's always the pretty role. I think she took this role because it starts out as a cleaning lady, and it gets glamorized later, but they promised her some character development.
It's kind of sci-fi Cinderella in that sense.
Yeah.
You know, so I can see it like as a sci-fi fantasy what the Wachowskis were going for. There's always a smart kid in class who's also really, really creative who writes something that's so fucking weird no one would ever buy it.
Yeah.
That's kind of my impression of the Wachowskis in Jupiter Ascending. It's like, I know what you're doing, and it's not that it's not a creative idea. It's just, I say this a lot about like George Lucas and some others. Your creativity and intelligence gets in the way of your understanding of people. And I think
good. I might even include overwhelms your understanding of people.
Yeah. And I think that's where Jupiter Ascending really has its flaws, but we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. So so Jupiter Jones, as we said, is a Chicago maid who learns that she's the genetic reincarnation of a galactic queen and rightful heir to Earth. No kings! Just kidding. She's rescued by Kane Wise, a wolf-human hybrid, because every good woman needs a nice dog.
No, not dog. Wolf. That's sexier.
Right. How many times have you read Twilight, Mac? Don't lie to me.
I don't read Twilight. I just pay attention. Girls want their men fierce and scary, but cuddly with them.
You don't read Twilight. You just look at the pictures. All right.
I don't need to read it.
Soldier sent to protect her from intergalactic royal siblings who want to harvest Earth for immortality serum. Among them is, every time we go to a restaurant, my son says semen just to annoy my girlfriend, and I needed to share that with you, Mac. He will just look right at her and go, semen. And
I think I like your boy.
And just like, fucking turns the table over and walks out. I'm eating a plate of shrimp. It's always a scene when we go out to dinner. Anyway, I didn't come here to tell you that. Among them,
right. I'm glad to know it.
Among them is Balaam Abraxas, a whispery tyrant bent on. I like that it's whispery. A whispery tyrant bent on reclaiming Earth. I once saw Whispery Tyrant open up for Metallica in 1989 at the Nassau Coliseum. Through murder. Jupiter is pulled into the space politics of inheritance, capitalism, and planetary genocide. After several chaotic battles and bureaucratic absurdities, she rejects the throne, as all good girls do, but chooses to protect Earth anonymously. Kane gets his wings back, and they fly off together, as men and women often do. The movie blends camp, ambition, and a sincere message about personal agency and cosmic systems of control. Oi with this movie, Mac. Oi with this movie.
I'm going to oi with you.
So, again, I think this is the second time I've seen this movie. This is the second podcast I've done on this movie. My friends and I did a watch along with it a couple of years ago. Before the video days. And I remember thinking to myself again, this feels like somebody who really, really, really likes science fiction, science fantasy, and it's inspired by lore-heavy high fantasy, also inspired by lore-heavy space fantasy and science fiction. So somebody who's read all the Lord of the Rings and all the Dune and watched all the Star Wars and watched all the Star Trek and was like, I want to take Disney princess fantasy, high fantasy like Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings, and I want to take Dune and I want to take Star Wars and I want to throw it in the blender and I want to make a movie out of this. And they were like, that's great. That's a lot of ideas you've got there and a lot of aesthetic and a lot of inspiration. What's your story? And this is where the autism comes out. Where
Mark, you're splitting hairs. Come on, say what you think.
You have to. Narrative should be thick and meaty, but also simple. The world building and lore, I think, is great for setting, and I think somewhat for motivation. when it's also driving your fucking plot, this is where I think things get bogged down. And also, I don't think people do really well with too many blended things. It's like if you're making juice and you're like, I'm going to throw some oranges and bananas and avocado and a little bit of peanut butter in there. Well, yeah, that sounds like a wonderful smoothie. Great. I'm also going to throw guava and elderberries and spinach. Please stop.
And
but
just
wait.
a dash of port wine.
And then some port wine and this here Snickerbaugh. Like, all right. Now you individually, even somewhat compartmentally, those things are all wonderful. Together like that, that's a mess.
Yeah. And the worst part about that is that might even taste good, but you won't know why. Female Luke Skywalker. There's our fan. Thank you, Michelle.
Yes. What did you think of this movie, Mac, while I die slowly?
I thought as a theater person, as a person who appreciates storytelling in a thespian way, this was infuriating. This movie should have been, I'm going to say 7 or 8 different movies, because there's lots of good little scenes. Well, there's lots of good little scenes. For instance, the scene where Mila Kunis's character begins to relate to bees. They seem to know who she is.
Yeah.
And that's a great character
bees
building.
recognize queens, and I almost took up my cock and peed on my computer. I was laughing so hard.
Then there's a relationship between Channing and Sean Bean's character. That didn't seem to belong in this movie, although it was there. These were all good character pieces.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the glamour and splendor of, you're actually a galactic princess. Here, wear this dress and fly through space and look glamorous. They just didn't belong together.
It is
These
the worst.
Good little bits.
It is the worst case of and then.
Oh God, yes.
And like Homer's car,
Yeah.
Or better yet, I meant to say, Poochie from The Simpsons. We want to create a character that is relatable to every possible demographic. Well, he has to be a dog, and he has to be a Rastafarian, and he has to be this, and he comes out and he's speaking in, the Yo MTV Raps version of Ebonics. And it's like, all right, this appeals to nobody.
Well, the hell of it is the plot's not that bad, or not that complex. It's Cinderella. It's her scrubbing toilets and then rising to you have to wear this dress because it knows your heartbeat. That's how far apart these two places are. But it's a rise. It's a Cinderella rise.
Well, again, Michelle's point about this being Luke Skywalker. Nobody knows. Fuck, George Lucas didn't know when he wrote this. That Luke Skywalker was going to be as important as he is. Mm-mm. If you just look at what I've actually talked about this with my son recently, because he's currently watching all the Star Wars movies from beginning to end. And I said the whole thing with Luke is he's the classic, Joe Campbell's Heroes with 1,000 Faces. He's a naive farm boy who goes on an adventure, faces loss, overcomes obstacles, and saves the day in the end.
And he grows more powerful and more able.
The more movies came out, the more important Luke had to become, the more complicated his past had to become.
Yeah.
George Lucas has even said, like, Star Wars is really the middle and the end of what he had envisioned. Like, the whole concept of, like, I think Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father was not, I think, his original intention. That's something they came up with later. But
they had to explain a few things, so they did that. It was the device.
Yeah. My point being, like, if Mila Kunis's whole thing was, yeah, you're living this shitty life now, but you're really a galactic princess, and we need you because your brother is a tyrant, and we need you to displace him. That's all you needed. This is like, it's like they sat around and they was like, it's kind of what you said about Cloud Atlas. There you were like timelines. This is ideas. Like, we want to do this idea, this idea, this idea, this idea. That's too many fucking ideas. Stop, you crazy person. Who are you, Wes Anderson? Knock it off.
No, where's Dorian?
You get 2, maybe, out of this list. Maybe 3 if you're really clever about it. But that's it. Well, we want to do 10 ideas. What the fuck are you doing? This isn't a television series. This is a movie.
Like you said, I sense a theme here. They like doing that.
Yeah. I don't. What's weird is that the Wachowskis work in the studio system, and I don't understand why. Like, no one ever tells them no. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Even with the
everybody
Matrix,
else gets told no. Like, you can't do that. No, you can't have 50 plot lines in your movie.
Well, I mean, when the Matrix came out, they had a lot of red lights too. But then it blew the lid off everything, and people start saying maybe we're saying no to too many things. And I think that's how this happens.
Right. So now we're gonna let the autistic run Hollywood, and you see where that led us.
We stop with the autistic. We're gonna get letters, man.
That's fine. I'm at Mark Radulich on Twitter, and TikTok. Come at me, bro. Anyway, so let me say some things about this movie. It kind of reminds me of. It kind of reminds me of when people were like, "The Fifth Element is the new Star Wars." Like it is such a cultural anchor point for people. Star Wars is that everything is the new Star Wars or the next Star Wars, or they're doing a Star Wars but this way, and it's like that's not really what this is. It reminded me more of the Fifth Element than it did Star Wars. That's why I brought that up. Beyond that, I think Mila Kunis is trying her level best. Channing Tatum has always got a lot of charisma. He's a good-looking dude, obviously, and I think he is doing his level best to carry this thing. Eddie Redmayne did what he was directed to do. I don't blame him for his performance. Like, it's people. This is an argument I get into with Robert, where who's to blame when you have bad performance, the director or the performer? And I'm watching Eddie Redmayne in this, and they took those takes. They said, okay, we're moving on.
Yeah.
They didn't tell him to do it differently, or if they did, this is the best of what they got. I mean, I've seen Eddie Redmayne act in other places. He's not this bad.
Yes, and he can. If you give him a clear image of what you want, that's what you'll get.
Right. So I think you have to then ask yourself why the Wachowskis wanted that from him. They clearly had a vision of what they wanted this villain to be like.
Yeah.
I'm not going to belabor the point. Do you have anything else about Jupiter Ascending?
Just while we're on Eddie Redmayne, he's a wildly capable actor who should not have been in this film. Given what they wanted from him, they wanted They wanted Gary Oldman. That's what they wanted. They kind of did. They want the deeply disturbed, edgy, psychotic that you're always worried about. Eddie can play that. But he was a single note in this movie, maybe two, and that's hitting a fly with a sledgehammer. It's too much actor, and the director didn't give him enough room to be psychotic. He was just always whispering and hissing at people and looking strange. If you're gonna ask that much of him, give him enough lines that he can establish his psychosis.
They kept Eddie's scope of character so small and
oh God, yes. Michelle. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Yes, they took this howitzer cannon and said, "Here, blow the top off of this candy bar.
Here, we're going to play William Tell. Here's a bazooka. Lots of luck.
Sure, go for it. Way to go!" And of course, he did what he was told. And I'll bet you anything, there's 50 miles of him on the cutting room floor. But I like I said to begin with, the plot is simple, but the execution is wildly complicated. There are scenes that deserve a movie that shouldn't be in this one.
Yeah. Well, folks, I believe that wraps up our director focus of the Wachowski sisters. I had a lot of fun. Mac, I wasn't quite sure how this show was going to go. We didn't know we were going to have Sean or not, but I really enjoyed talking to you about this. So you're allowed to come back. I had a good time too. Thank you. Well, that's fantastic.
Thanks. Thanks, Michelle. Oh, by the way, I want you to know that I'm treating our fan well. I took her out to dinner the other night, and we had a good time.
Good. That's fantastic. Thank you for Michelle for commenting and watching. She had a fairly sizable sizable audience.
A reliable fan. That's really great.
There must be all your people, Mac. People tuning in to see Mac come in here and straighten me out.
Well, I'm not going to say they're just mine, but they might be.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's the only reason why I have you on. I need your fan base to come. Well, I haven't guessed otherwise.
My fan.
Yeah. Hang on, another comment here. She says, "I had a great time. Also, we aim to please here."
There we go. If you're a fan of the show, we're going to treat you good.
Alrighty. So this past week, I did a lot of TikToks, but I also did some podcasts. On Father's Day, we celebrated Father's Day the best way we know how by talking about Darth Vader in comic books. So me and Jesse did all 30 issues of the Darth Vader and Vader Down crossover from Marvel Comics and Lucasfilm. Then myself and Robert Winfrey talked How to Train Your Dragon, the live-action remake. On Wednesday, we reviewed both seasons of The Critic. If you're like, but they were the webisode season, that doesn't count. Webisodes don't count. Saturday, speaking of other weird Steven Spielberg things, there'll be a comic strip. We'll be looking at the book Here by, I believe it's the author's name is Richard McGuire, and we'll be comparing it to the Steven Spielberg movie adaptation of that book, which I saw last year. It's an interesting movie. Next week, Jesse and I are going to do an extra source material. We're going to do All-Star Superman, which is the basis for the new movie. Superman's coming out next month. We'll be reviewing Elio, the new Pixar movie. And then we close out Pride Month with a triple feature of Milk, Kinsey, and Lizzie, because I'm cheeky. So that's how we're celebrating Pride Month here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. But Friday, yes, sir. Controversial. Myself and Jesse Starcher will be doing a new sessions on a Friday night show. We're gonna take the gag reel from our review of Ant-Man: Second Chance Man, where I questioned why was Darren Cross pink and muscular, which I referred to as the LGBTQ Hulk, and
oh God, Mark, I want to go to whatever part of hell you wind up in.
And Jesse said, "Hit it, Darren!" And me and Jesse and Ronnie at the time started to disco dance. We did. So we're gonna take all of that nonsense and turn it into a dubstep song.
Oh no, I have to see that.
This is what we do.
Oh,
Abuse artificial intelligence.
Why not? What's it
all right? Like a submissive in the basement. Listen, that's what we got going over here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. What projects is the government allowing you to talk about, Mac?
Oh, these days I'm working just a little too hard to have much project. I'm considering a little more aggressively fishing out the copywritten play I have and maybe giving it a second act, but I'm not sure where I want to go with that yet, which is why it's taking this long.
I sent Mac a herring, three branches of a rose bush, and a bag of Coke, and said, "Here, write a script with this."
By the way, when we're done today, I want to talk to you about that.
Fantastic. So, folks, I'm now done insulting half of our audience, and Mac is done tolerating it. So for Mac Kettner, I've got to clear my throat for some strange reason. Be well, be safe, and behave.